Quite a bit of chop and churn not for our markets because our markets closed in absolutely flat, holding on to that 17,500 print for the Nifty futures. Chop and churn because the global cues were really going all over the place. Last night itself, you had a big crash on Meta, that's erstwhile Facebook, when its earnings disappointed by a huge margin. You had a 26% slide coming in on the stock. Its worst day in the history of its listed life, and that clearly rubbed off on the Nasdaq as well as US equity markets across the board. In fact, the Nasdaq slid by nearly 3% in trade. Having said that, in after hours itself, you saw a recovery coming in. This morning when we walked into trade, while the handover from US equity markets was weak, but US futures were actually more than making up for the overnight losses. So about 1.5% in the green is the kind of move that you had on Nasdaq. And then, of course, towards the latter part of our trading session, you had Amazon come out with its numbers. And that was a big beat. So that also kept the US equity markets, or US futures rather in this case, hold on to its gains and still very much in the green. So that said, Europe, of course, was a little bit of a lukewarm session while they started off a little bit flat. And then from there, European equity markets did drift down a little bit in trade. So really, it was all about tracking US cues. We closed in flat, but there was lots happening amidst that flat Nifty. Metals and power actually were the only sectors which managed a firm close for themselves. Rest all of them were big rank underperformers. Autos, of course, took the biggest knock today. So everything from a Hero MotoCorp to an M&M to an Eicher Motors, Tata Motors, the entire pack was in the week today. SBI as well, interestingly, closed in at the session lows, over a 2% cut on SBI futures, and this ahead of its earnings, which are due to be reported tomorrow, that's Saturday, and that's something that the market is going to react to only come Monday morning. So those, of course, were your weak links. There was also HDFC Life, Kotak Bank, UPL, there was Bajaj Finance, there was Reliance as well, which was lower, nearly about 1% in trade. Add to that, there was also news flow on Godrej Properties, for instance. Their recent partnership with DB Realty, of course, not being taken well too much with the street. That stock gapped down by about 10%, lifted a little bit, and still closed in pretty much around the session lows today. FSL, M&M Finance, SBI Cards, Coromandel International were some of the other rank underperformers in trade. The breadth of the market, of course, lagged what the benchmarks were doing. After a bit of a flip and flop ride, they finally closed in favoring the declines by a huge margin. We had a count of nearly 150 to the declines, with a count of 53 to the advances and closing bell within the F&O segment. Now to the gainers, ONGC with crude prices already at $91 to a barrel. ONGC definitely was a big outperformer today. It's already been a very, very strong stock of late. There was also Hindalco, Divi, Sun Pharma, Asian Paints, Unilever, JSW Steel, HCL Technologies. These were all stocks which held out. There was Torrent Power, Hindustan Copper, Vedanta, Marico. These were all stocks which performed quite okay for themselves. Of course, tomorrow is the big day. You've got SBI numbers, but looking at the market construct, it really seems increasingly that it's largely global cues which have a hand in dictating how our market mood is going to be. Next week, of course, is extremely critical. Not just you've got some heavy-duty earnings lined up all through the week, both large as well as mid-cap, but you've got the RBI policy as well. So that's going to be of utmost significance as to what the RBI stance is, and that's something that the market is going to react to.